Welcome back to the wonder of the Bible. Darkness descends, hope rises. Lesson 2. Today we're going to ask the question, what does Noah's story reveal about the nature of Yahweh's interaction with people? What's your favorite love story? Mine is Pride and Prejudice. It's an amazing story. Darcy and Elizabeth meet at a ball. It rapidly turns from politeness to animosity. Darcy stands willing to reconcile, but Elizabeth cannot, will not. Finally, when all is lost, she allows Darcy to be her rescuer, to save the honor of her family. In so doing, she finds the deep and abiding love he has held for her all the time. It's a silly illustration. For the point, it's got loads of flaws, yet it connects to the bigger story of God's interaction with humanity. A divinely inspired example, but not one I'll chase today, is Ezekiel 16. What started well in the Garden of Eden rapidly deteriorated with Adam and Eve's rejection of Yahweh. But Yahweh didn't walk away, didn't pursue another. He didn't start over. He didn't change his mind or come up with a new plan. Yahweh patiently pursued those he called to be his own. Have you ever heard Rosaria Butterfield's testimony? I'll drop in the description a link to her testimony. You have to listen. It's a must. She was a rabid feminist who hated all men, didn't want men in her life, lived out alternate lifestyles. And I was looking for it. I can't find it again. But I recall her describing her testimony this way. Sitting in the pew, God stalked her like a lion. And she knew she'd have to come to Christ, which she'd have to renounce her feminism, her lesbian nature, give everything up, and submit to the perfect man for salvation. For someone who was a radical feminist, giving up the entirety of her identity and embracing the love of a perfect man was everything. It's an amazing story of how God pursues those who are his. Today we're going to discuss, again, God's love story, how he pursues his children. He stalks, he hunts, he never quits loving. God created man so that he could love man and in return be loved and honored by man. It's mutual love, just like a marriage should be. God stayed faithful, he's remained true. We, not so much. He continues to love and will keep loving no matter how often we stray from him. Last week we looked at how amazingly big Yahweh is. We looked at the expansive creation and that how he personally created and interacted with Adam and Eve. We closed with the fall and Yahweh's mercy and love and, yes, justice all together. Today we're going to explore the history of Noah. For Adam and Eve, things didn't look so rosy as they leave the garden. The curse came true, their children murdered each other, there was violence, crimes and sin multiplied. They filled the earth, but as it happened, things became a lot more vile, a lot more wicked. Every day, mankind ignored Yahweh in the garden. It was still there. Didn't matter. Every day, mankind pursued their own interests, dove deeper and deeper into their sin. The day finally arrived in which only one family was left. Only 8 souls still honored Yahweh. A few years after Seth dies, Noah is born. Noah's name is intriguing. He's about 10th from Adam. Intriguing name, it means comfort. In the Hebrew, there are no vowels, there's just consonants. And so context tells you whether these consonants make up this word or that word. His name means comfort, but it's the same consonants for the word rest. And Moses, when he writes this, the book of Genesis, he leans in on this. He frequently uses these two words to recount the history of Noah. It's not obvious to us in English, but it's still there. And the thing to understand here is that despite the horrors of this history, Yahweh has in mind rest and comfort for the earth, for Noah, and for us. And Moses uses this play on words to communicate these ideas. And we find that Noah chooses righteousness even as his family rejects Yahweh. Remember, Noah's not like us, right? We see craziness on TV, around the world. We see riots and violence and wars and people, whole nations who reject God. But they're not us, right? They don't typically show up to our family gatherings, though sometimes. When Noah was a child, he could go to a family gathering and meet Seth's children, Adam's grandchildren. He could talk to people who knew Adam and Seth. He could talk to people who remembered the first murder. The people mocking him, the people rejecting him, were his family. In all the world, there were only a few left who loved Yahweh. His grandfather Methuselah was around up until about the flood, as was his father Lamech. But on flood day, they were gone. The last of his family that honored Yahweh and would have supported him was gone. All alone in the world, just Noah, his wife, and his 3 sons. And their wives, 3 married sons. God appears to Noah and gives him the unimaginable command: build an ark and fill it with all the animals. And it says, and the earth was corrupted before God, and the earth was filled with violence. God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth was filled with violence because of them. Now look, I am going to destroy them along with the earth. Make for yourselves an ark of cypress wood. You must make the ark with rooms. Then you must cover it with pitch, inside and out. And this is how you must make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. Its width, 50 cubits. Its height, 30 cubits. You must make a roof for the ark, and finish it to a cubit above. And as for the door of the ark, you must put it in its side. You must make it with a lower, second, and third deck. And I, behold, I am about to bring the flood waters over the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life from under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall perish. And I will establish my covenant with you, and you must go into the ark, you and your sons, your wife, and the wives of your sons with you. And every living thing from all flesh you must bring, 2 from every kind into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. From the birds according to their kind, and from the animals according to their kind. From every creeping thing on the ground according to its kind. 2 from every kind shall come to you to keep them alive. And as for you, take for yourself from every kind of food that is eaten. You must gather it to yourself, and it shall be for you and for them food. Okay, lots of words. Can you imagine Noah's position getting this command to build an ark? The task is just unreal. I mean, imagine it for a minute. Here in Noah's mind now, I felt alone. People were rejecting me. They're rejecting my family. They're rejecting Yahweh. Now we'll have to start civilization over with No one. No markets to purchase onions, garlic, nice cloth, pottery, or lumber. We'll have to make and grow everything ourselves, all alone, so very alone. Yes, Yahweh will be around. Yes, He's taking care of us, but it's not like we can just wander over to His house for a chat or invite Him to dinner. It'll just be the eight of us for a very long time. And yet, despite the prospect of being alone and all the hard work that comes with starting over a civilization, He chose obedience to Yahweh. He chose to trust the Creator. He did what Adam didn't do. He decided that Yahweh's approval was worth any amount of pain and suffering. And there was still the promise that I will establish my covenant with you, and you must go into the ark, you and your sons and your wife and the wives of your sons with you. The plan of Eden was still in effect. Yahweh would go with them, and they will fill the earth, and they will cultivate it, they will subdue it, they will bring about His plan. There's still a snake slayer coming. The world would be made right. Yahweh had promised. Noah would have faith in that promise, and no matter how difficult things become, he would keep his eyes fixed upon the one who promised, the lover of man's souls, the redeemer of the earth. Noah understood something. Noah understood that the Creator had made a promise, and he could rely on the all-powerful Creator to keep his promises, because God doesn't change. Noah certainly knew that Yahweh walked, talked, and taught Adam and Eve personally. He could, and in fact was, right with Noah and caring for Noah right now. Despite the great evil of mankind, Yahweh loved men. He would win man back without violating His mercy or His justice. He had a plan. He would accomplish this love story. He would love man, and eventually man would love Him back. Yahweh walks amongst the earth, and He sees that mankind pursues evil constantly. Sometimes we frame this as being the most vile behavior imaginable. And certainly, that's part of it. Yet I find it interesting, though, the difference between Genesis' presentation and Christ. See, in Genesis it says, the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So we're going to take the corrupt and assume that means lots of bad deeds. But the one that's called out is the violence against each other. Christ, on the other hand, says, for just as the days of Noah were, so the coming of Son of Man will be. Whereas in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, till the day Noah entered into the ark. They did not know anything until the deluge came and swept them all away. So also the coming of the Son of Man will be. So there's violence everywhere. And yet, they're going about, get married, living their lives. They can't be bothered to notice. Uh, you know, they simply ignore Yahweh, the garden. Doesn't matter. Remember, they could physically go see the garden and the swords keeping them out. But it didn't matter to them. Yahweh's planning their destruction for their rebellion, and they couldn't even be bothered to pay attention. Unreal. I want to take a short detour from it because this point really gets in my head. How is it with the garden right there, knowing the people who knew Adam and Eve, could they still reject? I mean, it's not like it's 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago. It's like, hey, Grandpa, what was Adam and Eve like? Oh, they were really sad, having been kicked out of the garden for their sin. They didn't care. They just simply didn't care. Why is that? Why do people worship other gods? There's a lot of reason for this, but I want to make a couple points. First of all, I believe I was raised in a way that I I just assumed that these ancient people set up trees and rocks and carved them and bowed down to them, and it was like, how silly is this? And yet, that was silly, right? Because I don't actually think that's what happened. I think they actually worshipped beings. They worshipped other gods, and these gods had actual power. They weren't Yahweh. They weren't his equal. They were created beings who were fallen, like Lucifer, who rejected Yahweh's rule. And we see that they have power, and they have power, and they used it within the earth. Look at Pharaoh, right? His mages turned dead wood into living snakes. Think about that a minute. Dead wood to snakes, that's pretty amazing. The Bible speaks as the other gods as if they're real. I mean, listen to Jethro. Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all the gods, even in the matter where the Egyptians, deal arrogantly with the Israelites. And in Exodus 12, God says, "And I will go through the land of Egypt during this night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from human to animal, and I will do punishment among all the gods of Egypt. I am Yahweh." He is not saying, I'm going to go and deface all the statues. That doesn't make any sense. He also says in Numbers 33, says that while the Egyptians were bearing all the firstborn among them whom Yahweh struck, Yahweh also executed punishments among the gods as a separate act. So the Bible treats these beings as real. Now, historically, there's a lot of non-biblical stories where gods are treated as living and interactive. Many of the megaliths, these cultures of beings that interact um, pretty consistently, actually. And there's modern stories that are the same, whether it is 1500s with John Dee in the court of Queen Elizabeth, or somebody who's receiving messages from angels and using those messages to guide the rise of the British Empire. Whether it is NASA scientists or Silicon Valley titans who claim publicly that aliens have guided them and given them their breakthroughs. Whether it is a modern Indian mathematician claiming that one of the millions of gods of the Hindu faith came to him and provided him with his breakthrough in mathematics. We see that there are beings interacting with mankind, and we see that it's prevalent in the Old Testament. And I bring it up for this point because when you begin to understand what's going on here, some of these stories make more sense. I mean, look, why would they leave Yahweh other than they're dead inside, right? But they see the garden. Why ignore it? Because the garden represented Yahweh, who says, turn from your natural desires. Turn and deny yourself. These other gods, and if you ever study the religions, ooh, wow, they said, indulge your desires. Fill your heart with whatever it is you want. Make yourself happy. Worship me instead. I can do miracles, watch. I can do these things, watch. I can give you knowledge, watch. Worship me and indulge all of your fantasies. What do you think they picked? They embraced their sin. As we go through this, you're going to see people choosing to embrace these gods who said, I will give you what you want. You can see it in Lucifer. Worship me and I give you what you want when he's speaking to Christ. This thread flows through Scripture. And Yahweh says, reject what you want and turn to me, and I will give you what you need, what is good. But I'm looking through this. This is the part to take another step aside for a minute. Was the flood real? Was it global? I was reading a book, and the author argues for a regional flood, and he had lots of reasons. I thought, those are interesting. Never heard it described that way before. I never thought about it. So, well, is he right? I want to go back to the Bible. The waters swelled 15 cubits above the mountains, covering them, and every living thing that moved on the earth perished, the birds and the domesticated animals and the wild animals, and everything that swarmed on the earth, and all humankind. Everything in whose nostrils was the breath of life, there it is again, among all that was on dry land died. And he blotted out every living thing upon the surface of the ground, from humankind to animals to creeping things and to the birds of heaven. And they were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah and those who were with him in the ark remained. And the waters prevailed over the earth 150 days. So, some pertinent facts here. There's specificity in the Bible. The mountains were 15 cubits below the water, so it's at least 12 feet. There's this timeline that's just day after day, week, month, listed by number, and then it says the height of the water. That means something. Okay? But more than that, this idea of the breath of life. In Genesis, God gives the breath of life. Now it says he takes the breath of life. He gave it to all, he took it from all. It's a very universal and parallel. Everything it received has now lost it. And it says that only those in the ark survived. There's global evidence of a flood, right? Whether it's the petrified forest in Antarctica, whether it's the whale graveyard in the middle of the Sahara Desert in Egypt, whether it is the fish bones and sea creatures all up and down on top of the mountains. Everything at some point was covered in water. But more to the point, all of that aside, just like Christ treated Adam and Eve as real, and when he was discussing marriage, he treats Noah equally real. And for these reasons and more, we hold that the flood was real and global, and all life died except those who were in the ark. Now, back to Noah. And Yahweh said to Noah, go, you and all your household, into the ark, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. From all the clean animals you must take for yourselves 7 pairs, male and his female, as well as all the birds of the heaven, 7 pairs, to keep their kind alive on the face of all the earth. For within 7 days I will send rain upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will blot out all the living creatures that I have made from upon the face of the ground. And Noah did according to all that Yahweh commanded him. In the 600th year of the life of Noah, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the springs of the great deep were split open, and the windows of heaven were opened, and the rain came upon the earth 40 days and nights. On this day, Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and the sons of Noah, and the wife of Noah and his 3 sons, the 3 wives of his sons with them went into the ark, and they and all the living creatures according to their kind, all the domesticated animals according to their kind, so forth, every winged creatures in the ark. And they came to Noah into the ark, 2 of each, from every living thing in which was the breath of life. And those that came, male and female, of every living thing, came as God commanded him. And Yahweh shut the door behind them. And the flood came 40 days. The waters prevailed greatly, and the ark went upon the surface of the waters, and the waters prevailed overwhelmingly upon the earth. They covered all the high mountains which were under the entire heaven. Can you imagine what it's like on the ark? You got all the animals in their pens, you have food, you have equipment to set up a new homestead, you have books, you're ready as you can be. You're sitting there. And Yahweh closes the door of the ark. Our Creator, who holds the cosmos in his hand, is about to scrub the earth clean, and yet he takes the time and care to close the door. In so doing, he shows that he is actively participating in their protection. Sitting there in the dark, or likely dim lights, they wait. Then it begins. The rain begins to hit the ark. Everyone knows they are about to die. The world they grow up on would be gone. Nothing would ever be the same again. They had to be terrified. When that first wave crashed against the ark, the boat rocks. It moves. It begins to float. You know, they trust Yahweh. They ever worry a little bit about their own construction efforts? Did they ever fear that the raging world would just consume them? The flood wasn't just rain and water. It was wind. It was lightning. It literally reshaped the mountains and the earth. The earth is going through the heavy wash cycle. Volcanoes are erupting. Everything finally comes to a calm. The earth is clean. Everything outside the ark is drowned. But there's hope. Creator of the universe wiped out all life but those on the ark. He guarded it, prevented it from being destroyed in the swirling waters. It was saved from being smashed on the mountains, from little things. You know, this picture, right? You've seen debris in a flood or in a gully where everything is topsy-turvy and just brishambled. And yet, not the ark. It landed neat and level. The door could be open, they could get in and out. How easy would it have been for this to be on a slope and been very awkward, or when you open the door, only part of it touched the ground? And yet, it was right. In this little way, God shows mercy and kindness and care and provision. 7 months, then the ark comes to rest. 6 months later before they can get out of it. And Noah offers a sacrifice to God when he comes out. And Yahweh smells the smoothing fragrance, and Yahweh says to himself, "Never again will I curse the ground for the sake of humankind, because the inclination of his heart is evil from his youth. Nor will I ever again destroy all life as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will not cease." Noah comes out, and there's got to be this moment of why build if God is willing to wipe the earth clean again? How can we be sure that the things that we do have any permanence? Can I let the animals wander off? Do I need to hold them close? God says, "No, be calm. I will not do this again." And before they can worry, he is settling that fear. And in this history of Noah, we see lots of connections that Moses makes to Eden, Exodus, and so forth. Moses draws forth that Noah has been commissioned to the same plan to go forth, multiply, subdue the earth, just like Adam was. There's blessings on Noah, just like on Adam. There's also a curse. But the curse was given in the garden is not given now. And in fact, God explicitly says, "I will not curse the ground again." There's lots of word echoes. We're not going to go into it here, but a lot of the commentators point out that Many of the words describing creation in Genesis 1 are repeated here in Genesis 8, 7, 8, and 9. And there's this lot of threads that are repeated. And they all agree that it's a very deliberate connection between Noah and Adam, as Moses writes it. We also see connections to the Exodus. Lots of terminology about clean and unclean animals for the first time. The first time Yahweh is worshipped via an altar and sacrifices. It's not that it didn't happen before, but it's not called out. Okay? We don't know that it happened. This is the first statement. Cain and Abel, it says, offered offerings. It does not say they were offering sacrifices. We don't know. What we do know is that Moses included this specifically here. And he's tying the sacrifice to the sacrificial system of Exodus, Leviticus. Okay? And we know this because he uses this very odd word, the covering of the ark. It says, um, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dried up. You hear that, and your first thought's like, he had a tarp on top? Yeah, kind of, what's the deal? Well, this word is used here once, and then nowhere else except to describe the covering of the tabernacle. And just like Yahweh is bringing the Israelites out of wicked Egypt and into the promised land, and he's going with them, and there's this covering over the temple, their salvation. We see Moses clearly laying the same framework over the ark. We have God saving people from the wicked world and bringing them into the new world, covered, just like with the tabernacle. Really cool. And God blesses Noah and his sons and says to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. Again, this plan. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every animal of the earth, and on every bird of the heaven, on everything that moves on the ground, all the fish in the sea. Into your hand they shall be given. Every moving thing that lives shall be for you as food. As I gave the green plants to you in the past, now I give you everything. Only you shall not eat raw flesh with blood in it. And your lifeblood I will require from every animal, I will require it. And from the hand of humankind, from the hand of each man to his brother, I will require the life of humankind. That's awkward, we'll come back to it. As for the one shedding the blood of humankind, by humankind his blood shall be shed. For God made humankind in his own image. There's some modern controversies that are addressed here. One is evolution. Yahweh has placed man over the animals. He gave the animals as food to mankind. And Yahweh separated mankind from the animals. Here's the thing. People want to go debate Genesis 1 and 2 and creation stories and so forth. I'm just going to point out that here, Yahweh is making very, very clear distinctions between mankind and the animal kingdom. The animals don't get to eat us as food. Okay? Look at the image of God part. Mankind is explicitly in the image of God. Murder in any form is sin. Mistreatment of humans, we draw from this, is wrong. God even condemns the animals that slay mankind because they are marring the image of God. We are different. There's no two ways about it. The Bible does not tolerate any other approach. Let's go back to this awkward wording. From his fellow man, I will require a reckoning for the life of man. That's how most modern translations will approach it because it's readable. But the original, as we see represented here, from the hand of each man to his brother, I will require the life of man. This idea of the hand of each man to his brother, this is the murder of a brother. The idea is this prohibition against murder is tied to killing one's family. It points right back to Cain and Abel. And it points to we're all descended from Noah. We are family. And we should treat each other righteously. This idea condemns mistreatment of the people around us. It condemns the murder and violence against other people. One thought here. Why is the blood of people and animals being called out? It says, don't eat the flesh of the animal with its blood, the shedding of human blood. There's a couple of things here that this is a foundation point for. One would be the blood sacrifices in the judicial system, the Levitical system in Israel. But part of this is the blood represents the life of a person. And without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins. There is violence required because of sin. And here we see a foundation point, an anchor for the blood in the rest of the Bible. We see here God laying out the groundwork for us to understand what it means for the need for death, the need for a sacrifice. Of course, while justice demands blood, mercy offers a sacrifice for in our place. It's the amazing God we have. He doesn't, he's working with them, but he's also offering all along his own son in our place. Right here with Adam, or with Noah, caring, protecting, ministering, yes, judging, but mercy. It's pretty amazing. When you read your Bible, I hope you remember as you go through and you see the sacrificial system, you remember this anchor point as it's pulled forward. And we see increasingly throughout the Old Testament into the New Testament the case being built for a blood sacrifice offered by God Himself for His people. And of course, we end with the rainbow. The bow shall be in the clouds, and I will see it, so as to remember the everlasting covenant between God and between every living creature with all flesh that is upon the earth. God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I am establishing between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. The covenant that He will keep the earth and He will not destroy it again as He did until the end of time. Yahweh, in justice, judges the earth. He saw the violence, the murder, the wickedness, the utter indifferent rejection of Him. He judges. But in His mercy, He rescues humanity through Noah and his sons. Yahweh spoke with, He's guided protected, provided salvation for Noah. He's there for Noah, not just giving the wisdom, telling him what to do and how to do it, but closing the ark. He's protecting the ark. He's getting them out of the ark. He's ensuring they survive. How much more personal can he get? He's protected his promise of a serpent slayer. He told Eve that a descendant would slay the serpent. If he wipes out all mankind, it makes him a liar. But he didn't. He preserved a remnant. And he continues pursuing mankind in love. We have a truly amazing God.